Actually, on January 1, I'm still doing my military service, uh, but later on, it kind of came as low as about 83 cents. And it went, this is 2008 crisis. It went as high as buck 60. Now it's around buck 10. But I think in the long term, euro is going to go below one again. But this is a lot of movement, both in short periods of time and over time. I mean, suppose you got a loan with payments over the next 10 years. And because of one reason or another, you decided to borrow in euros instead of dollars. Until about 2 years ago, uh, you couldn't borrow at negative rates, but it was close. If you were a corporation, you still would have had to pay positive rates, but the yields on 10-year German bonds, bond is the German for bond. Uh, Actually, no, bond refers to bonds of the Federal Republic, which in German means Bundesrepublik. Republic. That's where bond comes from. Yes. No, it was because of units they chose at that point. They could have set it up at €1 equals $12. All they had to do was, instead of setting the conversion rate for euro to German at 195,583, they could have said 19 583. It's arbitrary. Then, €1 would have started at almost 12, and now it would have been about 11. It's just a choice. I mean, back in 2003, when I came back to US to do my PhD in finance, $1 bought about 1.5 million Turkish liras. In 2005, there was a new currency. It was called literally new lira, and they got rid of 6 zeros. Now it was 1.5. Israel did something similar back in 80s, I think. That was the new shekel. For example, the old currency symbol for Turkish lira was used to be TRL. Now it's TRY. The Y is the first letter of the Turkish word for new. Uh, you know, it means yeni. So if there was a new Norwegian kroner, that would have been Ny kroner, right? New kroner. So the symbol probably would have been NKN instead of NKK. Or no, NOK, maybe it would have been NNK, something like that. They come up with numbers or symbols. But that's a lot of volatility. That's what I mean by, yes, back in early, during COVID times, you could have borrowed at zero cost in euros, where you would have paid maybe 3% in US. But look at what, it's not here, but let's look at what happened to that exchange rate over the 5 years, including COVID times. So we were about 109, went as high as 121, went as low as 0.95. It's back 110. That's a lot of volatility. Volatilities like that, A, makes planning difficult. B, it has a built-in economic cost. If you have no choice but to experience that kind of volatility, that's going to reduce your desire to invest. Normally maybe I want to invest in a country in the Eurozone. But if I'm an American firm that chooses to measure its wealth in US dollars because my stock is traded in United States, I'm not going to invest as much because that volatility has a cost. We have financial means to deal with that sort of stuff, but that's not desirable. This is kind of percentage rate of change. I mean, these are daily, okay? I think daily, anywhere from positive 4% to negative 4%. Something like that in the stock markets for single stocks is considered relatively major, especially if you're talking about big caps. If NVIDIA goes up by 4 or goes down by 4, we view that as a major move. For indexes, it would have been catastrophic moves, but for exchange rates to happen, that's really big, big move. And that's very costly. We talked about that. Again, benefits, obviously, it reduces transaction costs. We don't have to convert our pesetas into Deutschmarks back into French francs to Belgian francs, especially for people who are traveling. You don't have to worry about currency, actual physical currency. That was never an issue in Turkey. If you went to a restaurant, wanted to pay in dollars, they said, sure. They used the calculator, done. They just gave you the change in Turkish lira. That happened to me in Reykjavik airport. I gave dollars to buy a coffee. They gave me the change in Icelandic kroner. That's why I have a 500 kroner note, which is about $5 these days, maybe four. Increases efficiency, yada yada yada. Main cost: you lose national monetary policy, and you no longer have an exchange rate policy. You can't do it by yourself. In order to manage those, a new entity was created. It's called the European Central Bank. The countries still have their own central banks, but they don't have that much uh, power in terms of monetary policy. And that main cost uh, came very apparent in 2008 crash. We'll get to those, but let's go back to 2008 crash. Uh, 2008 crash happened. Theoretically speaking, the countries in the EU satisfied the convergence criteria, but the trouble is to understand that you have to know the cultural norms and acceptable ethical things between different countries. In Germany, uh, as kind of a natural identity, it is considered a shame to cheat in official financial statements. France is not as strict, but similar. But in Mediterranean countries, if you can get away with something legally, you tend to do it. The Greeks were even worse in this because why? They were part of the Ottoman Empire for 500 years. And Ottoman Empire, even at the height of the things, there were no set ethical rules unless you were caught. For example, the so-called viziers, which were the ministers of the time. If you wanted to get anything done, you had to bribe those guys or their wives, and you get things done. But since everybody did it that way, it wasn't an issue. They only cut your head off if you started being greedy. If the going rate was, 100 gold pieces to get a permit to trade uh, for a Venetian merchant to be able to trade in Istanbul. If the guy started asking for 500, that went to the ear of the Sultan, and then your head was off. It was that simple. Uh, but that culture is still there. I mean, it's still prevalent in Turkey. Uh, Sometimes there isn't official bribing. Back in 2002, the party in the power changed, and this was a party that was